So my name is Liz Woodham and I'm the primary coordinator of the NRICH project. And I'm joined this afternoon by my colleagues, Ems and Charlie. Ems, Charlie, would you like to introduce yourselves? Ems?
Hi everyone, so I'm Ems, I'm the director of Enrich, so I work with Liz and Charlie. Hope you have a great session this afternoon.
And
Hi.
Charlie?
Yes. Hi, and I'm Charlie, and I share an office with Liz.
There we go. So the idea of this afternoon is to go through our current primary feature, to have a go at the tasks within it, some of the tasks within it. And this webinar has become a bit of a series now. This is our 5th webinar in this kind of series when we show you what's in our latest feature, our latest offering of tasks, and have a little go together and think about how the tasks can be used in the classroom and how they may encourage children to think in a mathematical way. Throughout this afternoon's webinar, we're going to be asking you to participate principally through the chat, so do make sure you can see that. We are very grateful to Trinity College here in Cambridge for providing funding for this series of webinars, and we will be putting the video of the recording up on the NRICH website for you to share with colleagues after today, should you wish. We'll give you the URL for that later in the session. Do make sure you're happy with the name, the way your name is displaying over your little video window, and change it if you'd like to. We hope that you will enjoy this afternoon's event. If you have any concerns at any stage, do drop Charlie or Ems or me a message privately in the chat. So without further ado, I think I'm going to share my screen again, but this time I'm going to share the NRICH website. I'm hoping, Charlie, can you nod? Can you see a web browser there? Brilliant. Okay, so this is the Enrich homepage, enrich.maths.org. Those of you who've participated in more than one of this series of webinars will know that we usually start here. But as this is a consideration of primary resources, we're going to go to the primary teacher homepage. And as I said, we're thinking about the tasks that are contained in this new feature here. So on the right-hand side in the blue box. So Charlie and I are going to have little conversations here and there about the games. We're going to have a go at some with you. Charlie didn't say so, but he's the secondary coordinator of Enrich. So if you've not met Charlie before, his bag are all the secondary resources, and so our conversations will be hopefully enlightening to you in terms of why we've created these resources and some suggestions about how they can be used. But do ask questions in the chat throughout. So this current feature, as you might be able to see from the text at the top, is encouraging strategic thinking. We are offering you a collection of games here.
Liz, I don't think we can see the title of the feature.
Yeah, I beg your pardon. Thank you, Charlie. There we go. Good point. So here we go. A collection of games which are designed to encourage children to think strategically. We're hoping that because these games don't just rely on chance, we're encouraging your learners to think ahead and to tweak what they are doing in order to develop winning strategies. As I say, if we scroll down, you'll see that there are a number of different games. We're not going to have time to actually go through each one in detail. We've chosen 3 in particular we'd like to share with you. Charlie, is there anything that you wanted to mention in a general sense before we launch into the first game?
Well, only that I don't really know the problems. You've told me a little bit about them, so our conversation is a genuine, when I ask questions, it's because I really don't know the answer to them. It's not that I haven't been paying attention when we've been at work.
I have to say that is true, yes. All right, so I suggest, Charlie, that we start with this first game here, which is called Double or Halve. Now, those of you who perhaps aren't so familiar with Enrich may notice that each of our tasks has an associated age range, so a suggested age that we think this task, this game is particularly suitable for. So we'll start off with one that we think will work well with the age 5 to 7 group. Now, rather than reading all this text, in fact, I'm going to go straight back because I don't want you to read the text. Charlie and I are going to have a go of the game to help you understand the rules. And then what we'd really like is your help as we play. Please do post in the chat suggestions about perhaps what we might do, but also if points occur to you about anything related to the game, do feel free to post. So at this point, rather than using my face, you'll be relieved to know that we're going to swap to the webcam. I'm hoping now you can see a dice, a pot and a pen with a piece of paper. Charlie, could you nod if that's the case?
Yes, but you're still sharing your screen, so you need to stop sharing your screen.
Thank you, brilliant. Okay, so this game is called Double or Halve. Charlie, we're going to start off and we're going to choose a total, a target number, if you like. I'm going to suggest we start with a target of, let's say, I don't know, 43. So that's our target.
Okay.
We're going to take it in turns to throw this dice, the 1 to 6 dice. And at each turn, the idea is to either double or halve the number shown on the dice. So let's start. Actually, I ought to tell you how you win first, oughtn't I? Whichever we do, we're going to keep a running total. So let's imagine I throw a 2, I decide to double, it becomes 4, and you then throw a 6 and you halve, so it's 3. Your 3 will get added on. And so we create a running total, and the winner is whichever one of us reaches this agreed target of 43. Now, as we play, we may have some further questions, and you participating may also have some further questions, but that's all I'm going to say to start with. Charlie, would you like to go first?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll double that, please.
Okay.
And do I have to double or halve, or could I have just added 1?
That's a really good question, Charlie. So I suggest you have to double or halve, but your idea of allowing the actual number on the dice as well would be a possible variation. That would give an alternative choice, wouldn't it? Okay, so my turn. I'm going to roll. Ooh, look, I've rolled a 1 again. I'll double. So 2 again, added to 2. I think that gives us 4. Okay. Here's your throw. I kind of feel slightly a bit of a fraud. Oh, look, this isn't a biased dice, you know. I feel a bit of a fraud because effectively I'm throwing all the time. Okay, 1. What are you going to do, Charlie?
Well, if we're going to get to 43, I better double it.
Okay. Let's see if we can get some higher numbers. 4. Oh, yeah. Okay, definitely going to double. So that's 8. 6 plus 8, 14. Charlie, do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Charlie's turn.
So can I halve that? Am I allowed to add 1.5?
Nice question. What should we do? So can we add 1.5? If we don't allow that, what's an alternative? Do you have any suggestions in the chat? If we're getting an odd number, how might we halve? We could go 1.5, yeah. So that would take us to 15.5. Do post in the chat if you have alternatives.
Or we could add 1 and then halve, or subtract 1 and then halve.
What do you reckon? You decide, Charlie, and then
well, if we allow to halve an odd number, the total will be something and a half, and then later on, when another odd number gets halved, we'll go back to having a whole number total.
Right.
So
okay.
Let's go for halving it, and we end up at 15.5.
Yeah. Okay. All right then. Let's have. Thank you for the suggestions in the chat. I can see that some of you have suggested. Yeah. Would you like me to write? I was going to write 15.5. which is not exactly what you said, Charlie. I hope you don't mind there. Would you prefer me to write 15.5?
What would you write for 5 to 7 year olds?
I think I'm going to write 15.5. Okay.
And are you happy about 5 to 7 year olds halving odd numbers?
I think that would be, we could, because we here and now are happy with halving, I think it's very appropriate to have decided that. And I think in the classroom, it would be really useful to have that conversation with your learners. It may be that as a teacher, initially you make the decision about what to do, but then as children play, you encourage them to tweak the rules. And so those who are confident in halving an odd number could go down that route. So I think I wouldn't really want to dictate here and now what all of us do in our individual classrooms. But as we're happy, let's do that.
But it could be quite a useful conversation, presumably.
Absolutely.
Identifying the numbers that are odd and then deciding that they've got to add 1 and then halve, or subtract 1 and then halve.
Absolutely, yes, I absolutely agree, Charlie. And
one thing that I'm not clear about, Liz,
yeah,
do we have to hit the target 43 exactly? So for example, if we're at 42 and I roll a 4, do I then go past 43 and then we change the rules to we have to subtract rather than add, so that when you're below 43 you're always adding, when you're above 43 you always subtract? Or might we just say, well, if you go past, then you're not allowed to do that, you lose that, you don't do, you just stay where you are, and you wait until somebody can hit 43 exactly?
I think the way that the initial game has been designed on the NRICH site, we've suggested that you do have to hit the target exactly. But everything that you have said, Charlie, would indicate that we could play around with that in the classroom. And yes, you might decide that if you go over, maybe, I wonder, you could say that as a player, you're allowed to pass, that you can decide that you're not taking a turn. And then you could avoid going over if you get a large number, for example.
I quite like this idea of yo-yoing beyond and below, so you can go past, but then you've got to sort of turn around and
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, let's see what we feel when we get there.
Okay, let's have a little look. Interestingly, there have been a couple of comments on the chat, one of which has only come to me directly, and that may have been what's the word, deliberate. Do make sure though, if you'd like everybody to see your comment, that you've used the drop down menu to select everybody. So some people are saying, yeah, we really like the idea of children challenging themselves with halves, and somebody is commenting on the fact perhaps recording it with the half symbol is something that younger children wouldn't be familiar with, but maybe they would write half, or they would find their own way of recording what is meant by half. Lovely, thank you for all those comments. I've forgotten now, Charlie, is it my go?
Yes.
Charlie, me, me.
I decided on the...
Okay, that's a 3. I'm going to double. So I think that takes us to 21 and, oh gosh, I can't write today. 21 and a half. Okay. Another 1.
Okay, I'll since you're having trouble writing halves, I'll halve that and take it to 22.
That's very considerate of you. Okay, let's carry on for a little bit, and then I think I'm going to open it up. Oh, a 4. So that, I'm going to double to get 8. Oh, we're getting quite close now, Charlie. I wonder how this might change the way we're thinking.
How about we change the rules about the odd numbers?
Okay.
And so let's play that if somebody gets an odd number, they want to halve it, then they're allowed to add 1 to their odd number.
Okay.
And then halve. Or perhaps we give them a choice. They can also subtract 1 and then halve. So if you get an odd number, you have 2 different possible totals.
Yeah.
So you look forward to getting the slight advantage to getting an odd number.
Yeah, that's a possibility, Charlie. Yeah, absolutely. Somebody has suggested that for an odd number, you could have the option of leaving the number as it is, as you were saying earlier.
Mm.
That's another alternative.
Yes.
Okay, what do you want to play then? Hang on, I'm not sure that I like the idea of changing the rules partway through a game, Charlie, but
Well,
okay.
I think we're far enough from the final line here.
All right.
To yeah, I don't think either of us has got an advantage as long as we've decided in advance.
It's an interesting point though, isn't it? Now we're getting closer. Perhaps we're beginning to think a bit differently.
Okay, so I'll add 1.5, please.
Okay, so adding 1, of course, takes us to 2. Halving takes us to 1. Right, so which is 31.
And I just hope you don't get a 6 now.
I wonder why you hope that, Charlie.
No!
Yeah.
Well, I definitely think you should halve that, Liz.
Okay.
That was a bad move on my part. I should have, when I had a 1, I should have taken 1 and halved. And then that would have left you on 30.
Interesting. But that's a nice. Okay, so I was going to say I was going to put my camera on, but in a second I will, because I think it's useful just to have a little look at the recording we've done here. What you're starting to do now, Charlie, is because I know you're quite competitive, but also you're wanting to use the mathematics to advantage you. And I think if we're doing some sort of recording like we have done now, this allows us now to look back at what we've done and think, what might I have done differently that would have given me the advantage? What I haven't done is recorded the dice roll. Maybe that would have been useful to do, as well as the total, because then we could unpick it a bit more. Of course, if you're playing this in the classroom, you would want to give children lots of opportunity just to play the game. I'm going to just turn myself, I'm afraid, back on as a warning to you all.
Well, I think my biggest mistake was to suggest we change the rules. If we just halved my 1, then you would have been 12.5 away from the target.
This is true. But as I was saying, I think we have rushed through that game just as a demonstration to you. Thank you for your comments on the chat about different ways of approaching it and how we might tweak the rules. If you have any other suggestions now you've seen the game being played about tweaking, please do contribute them to the chat. I think giving children lots of chance to play the game, either 1 against 1, but possibly even better, a pair against another pair, because then they can talk to each other about their strategies. It gives that, in inverted commas, reason to reason that we like to talk about. I mean, this game, if you think about the amount of calculation we were doing in a meaningful way, it had a purpose. Assuming that you'd like to win the game, assuming that you're wanting to play strategically. The game context, if you like, offers more than just a whole load of calculation practice worksheet type scenario because of that strategic thinking. You're mulling over possibilities, you're having to make decisions rather than only answering one particular question that is not without any choice on your part. Thank you to Karen for your comments. To use a table, yeah, nice idea, because then you would be potentially recording all the information you might need if you wanted to look back. Yes, 100 charts is a good idea as well, Paula. Yes, so you could be shading, couldn't you, on the 100 square? So you could be keeping a track of your running total that way, and then perhaps recording your dice roll somewhere else.
And we were trying to demonstrate various sort of variation on the games. Yeah. And normally we would expect students to agree on certain rules and then play the game using that rule. Yes. So we wouldn't expect children to be changing the rules halfway through. And we were doing it just to demonstrate variety. What we haven't demonstrated, but of course would be a further option, is to have more than one dice. So
Absolutely.
you have 2 dice, and then students can choose whether to add or subtract them, to double one and add the other one, double one and subtract the other one, double one and halve the other one, and then add them together. I mean, there are so many varieties. And then you could even have 3 dice, and you've got to add one and subtract the other, and you've got to decide. So there's a load of calculations and options and thinking strategically. And I think that you've got asking students to land exactly on the target, and if they overrun, then they've got to go back, kind of thing. They've got to, seems like offers the opportunity of doing loads of arithmetic and mental calculations, and it could be quite fun because certain students could come up with wackier and wackier rules. I play table tennis with the son of a neighbor, and we have ridiculous rules that if we are on a multiple of 5 and we win, a bit like snakes and ladders, and we win a point, then that's worth 5 points. But if we're on a multiple of 3 and lose a point, then we go down a whole number of points, and it just becomes part table tennis and part sort of mental arithmetic. And and sort of, so I can imagine children really enjoying coming up with stranger and stranger rules, and then sort of sharing them with the class and things.
Absolutely. Let me take you back to the NRICH website and just very briefly show you. Here we go again. This was the feature. This is the task that we were just looking at, double or halve. I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that it is what we call a live task. And so your children or you as the teacher can submit. Now, rather than, I know it says a solution, but really what we're asking for is some comments about the strategic thinking involved. There are some particular questions that we've asked at the bottom here just to encourage learners to think about the game. So you could encourage children to answer those and send in their thoughts, but really anything that your learners notice about the way they're playing, the choices that they're making, what they're thinking about in order to try and win this game. So do submit your solutions should you wish, should you have a go at that game. Okay, Charlie, so I think what I'd like to do now is to go back to the feature and show you another task. So this one is called NIM 7. So I'm going to click on it this time. You may have heard of the game of NIM. It's a particular kind of game. I'm not going to say too much. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but we've got a couple of variants in this feature, and this is the first one we're going to have a little look at. Now, I'm going to play you this very short video, which outlines how to play the game. And once you've seen the video, we'll come back and then we'll suggest what we do next. So I'm going to just play this. So do have a little look. Let's make it bigger.
Players called NIM 7. We've laid out 7 counters in a row, and we're going to take it in turns to take 1 counter or 2 counters. The winner is the player who takes the last counter or the last counters. So player 1's turn. Player 2's turn. Player 1's turn again. 2's turn again. And player 1 takes the last 2 counters and
So hopefully that gave you a little flavour of the game. You're taking it in turns to take 1 or 2 counters, and the winner is the person who takes the last counter or the last counters. Now, what we'd like to do at this stage is to try something out which we've not tried in one of these webinars before. So fingers crossed it works. we're going to pop you into breakout rooms with roughly 4 of you in a room. Now, in order to make this work, I think, as well as it can, we would encourage you, if possible, if you don't mind, to pop your camera on for the breakout room. I understand that that's not going to be possible for everybody, but if you don't mind, I think it would be helpful. And in those breakout rooms, what we'd like you to do, please, is have a think about this 7 counter game. So you've got 7 counters. You might like to just have a little go at playing it. Now, we appreciate you're not going to be able to share screens. So literally just using 7 fingers held up, one of you keeping track that way might be the easiest thing to do. You may well be more inventive than me, but that's a suggestion. We'd like you to have a little play of the game. And in particular, can you find a winning strategy? In other words, a way of guaranteeing a win so that you're guaranteed to take the last counter or the last 2 counters, no matter what your opponent does. So that's our challenge to you in the breakout rooms. We're going to give you about 5 minutes for those. If you manage to come up with a strategy and you want a further challenge, you could think, for example, about having more than 7 counters. You could think alternatively about what happens if you, rather than being able to take only 1 or 2 counters, if you could take 1, 2 or 3, for example. Or even, how do you play the game if it's the loser who takes the last counter? So those are just some ideas. When we come back from breakout rooms, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a volunteer to have a go at playing the game against me to demonstrate their winning strategy. So please don't be shy. We're all friends together. If you have any questions, please do pop them on the chat now before we go into breakout rooms. Please don't worry. A couple of you are saying that you don't have the facility to join on the camera. Don't worry, or Mike. But those of you who are, we would welcome it if you did. So Charlie, I believe you're very kindly going to pop everybody into breakout rooms. Oh, we've got your microphone on, Charlie.
So, sorry. So even if your camera's not working, you might still be in a breakout room and you might be able to hear. So we're going to have 14 breakout rooms and nearly all the breakout rooms will have 4 people. So you'll have to just agree, 2 people against 2 people. I found 7 pens on Liz's desk. So if you don't want to use 7 fingers, you can use 7 pens to play the game. And like Liz says, the person who takes the last pen or finger or the last 2 wins. And if that's too easy a challenge, then you can change the rules to the person who takes the last one loses. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to, and we're hoping to invite you back in 5 minutes time. So I'm going to set up 14 breakout rooms. Bye for now.
Could take me on at this game. Would you mind popping your name in the chat if you think you have developed a winning strategy? Oh, look at that. Oh, Janet. Janet's very confident.
I hope she's going to play against you, not against me.
I see that Janet says only if she goes first. Oh, yeah, we kind of got it. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, those of you who've posted. Well, Janet, if you don't mind, then I think I'm very happy to take you on. Now, Janet, I leave this up to you. If you'd like to put on your microphone and talk to us, please do, to let us know what you'd like to do. If you'd prefer to post in the chat about your move, then do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn to the visualizer again. I'm hoping you can see 7 counters.
Yes, you can.
Great. Now, Janet, are you sure I can't persuade you that I go first?
Oh, no, I think I need to go first.
Oh, that's really disappointing. I was hoping for an alternative answer. Go on then, you go first.
Janet, don't let Liz bully you.
I won't. I will take 1. I think I want that yellow one.
This yellow one. All right. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to take 2.
Then I shall take 1.
Are you sure?
Absolutely sure.
Positive?
You cannot convince me otherwise.
Well, I'm a bit stuck because I think at this point, there is absolutely nothing I can do. If I take 2, you'll take 1. If I take 1, you'll take 2. So, okay.
And then, of course, there I am.
Wonderful. So, Janet, were you absolutely convinced right from the word go you were going to win?
Yes.
All right. So I wonder, Janet, can you articulate your thinking for us, please? But anybody, those of you who've been observing, please do comment in the chat as well. What were your strategies then? How did you ensure you were going to win? Janet, you might like to give us your view, if you don't mind.
When you posed the problem, I started working backwards and started writing down numbers that if I faced them, I would lose. But when I played with my wonderful partner, I made a mistake and she won. And then I fixed my strategy to realize that I had to go first and you had to face 6.
Now why 6? Because there are people who are saying on the chat that you have to get down to 3. So why not 3, Janet?
Because if you're facing 6, I can make you face 3.
Right. So by you taking 1, I'm left with 6. And if leaving your opponent with 3 is the winning position, I know that if I'm left with 6, I cannot leave 3 because I can only take 1 or 2. So whatever I do, I cannot create that winning end point. Thank you so much, Janet. I appreciate you volunteering. Thank you so much. Thank you, those of you who are contributing on the chat as well. I'm going to put my ugly mug back on. Let's have a little look at the Enrich site again. I don't know whether, did any of you manage to think about any variations? Did you have a go? Oh, Nikki is saying, if you take 1, 2, or 3, then would 4 be the key number? Well, there's a question. Well, let's think about it, Nikki. I think you're right, because if I leave 4 at the end, there is no way that my partner can take all 4, but I know I can. 1, 2, or 3. There's always a combination of 1, 2, or 3 counters in 2 turns that makes 4. So I guarantee I'll be able to win if I leave 4. Brilliant.
I'm also wondering, Liz, using Janet's thinking, that if you had more than 7 counters,
yes,
you could then develop that strategy, because you started us with 7. So I think if you'd started with 8, then again, I think Janet would have wanted to start and would have taken 2 to start with.
Yeah.
But I imagine that if you'd started with 9 counters, she might have insisted that you start.
Now, there's an interesting question, Charlie. Let's have a think about that. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. There's 9 counters. I'm sorry, they're not in quite such a neat line. I can't kind of fit them neatly in a line quite so easily. But there we go. So, Charlie, you're suggesting with 9 counters, actually.
Well, if I play against you, Liz.
Yeah.
Tell you what, just to maybe this will help the argument. Can you organise your 9 counters into 3 rows of 3, please?
Of course, yeah.
And I'd like you to start, please.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, so I can take either 1 or 2 counters. I'll take 1.
And I'd like to take the other 2 from that top row, please.
Okay. My turn again. Okay, this time I'll take 2.
And I'll take the one that's left on that same row.
And here I am left with 3 counters again. And of course, there's nothing I can do to win.
And I'll take the 2 that are left. So I can always, you can never finish a row, but I always can.
Absolutely. That's a really nice way of representing it there with the counters in the 3 by 3 grid, isn't it? So why is it that in the case of 9, what is it about the number 9 that means in order to win, I want to go second? Anybody suggest that? Why? Okay, Paula, right. Okay.
So what seems to be good about this game, Liz, because
Yes.
it feels like a game and, you know, what's the role of this in a maths classroom? But the fact that we're beginning to think about multiples of 3,
Absolutely.
we're thinking about, you know, if we have many more counters, thinking about how do we get to the situation where we leave the other person with a multiple of 3. And of course, if you change the rules and instead of allowing me to just take 1 or 2, you allowed me to take 1, 2, or 3, then we're into multiples of 4.
Right, which is what Nikki was suggesting earlier. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
What seems like perhaps a game that doesn't include very much math then can be analyzed, and language like multiples can emerge.
Absolutely. This is a classic example, I think, of what Enrich like to call a low threshold, high ceiling game. You know, every child can begin to have a go at this game. You know, you just need to be able to take 1 or 2 counters. But then for those, you can begin to, in the context of the 7 counters, you can begin to think about a winning strategy. But exactly as Charlie is saying, you can then begin to think about different numbers of counters, generalize the approach for being able to take 1 or 2 counters, then begin to generalize the approach for if you have more counters. And so it becomes a really lovely high ceiling task without involving complicated mathematics. We are still only talking about, well, at the moment we've gone up to multiples of 4 is what we're talking about. Thank you, Charlie. Yes, now the Rupesh has says, yes, how about this last person to pick up loses? Now, Charlie was commenting to me earlier in the week how he finds it really difficult to think about that because there's something, I don't know about you, but there's something about taking the last thing which sort of seems triumphant, doesn't it? I'm the winner. And yes, so how does that change the game? I'm going to leave you to think about that because I'd really like us to have a look at one more task on the NRICH site. So let's go back to the NRICH site. I'm going to share my screen again. Here we go. Before we leave NIM 7, I'd like to just remind you of our teachers' resources. In this scenario, we suggest various points that you could stop the video and use the video to encourage children to think about strategy once they've had a good go at playing a few times to get a feel for it. And as you know, that we always include key questions, support and extension ideas. So do take a look at those when you have a little go in your classroom. Let's go back to the feature. Here we go again, playing strategically. Now, the last game that we're going to look at in detail is this one here called Daisy. And I'm deliberately not going to click on it because instead, Charlie and I are going to demonstrate again using the visualizer. Now, interestingly, this is another NIM game, but it's rather different. And it's slightly more challenging, I think, to analyse, which is why we're showing it you after NIM. So we would suggest that you have a go at NIM first with your class. So let me just stop.
And that's why you've given it 2 stars on the site, haven't you?
Thanks, Charlie. Exactly that. So here we go. I'm hoping now you can see. Oh, let me move those so that they're a little bit more visible. Move those down a little bit. There we go. That's better. I've drawn 3 daisies. You can tell I'm no artist. Charlie and I are going to take it in turns. We're just going to use 1 daisy for each game. I just drew 3 in case we play more than 1 game. We're going to take it in turns this time to shade the petal or petals of a daisy. So when it is our turn, we can either shade 1 petal or we can shade 2 petals that are next to each other on the daisy flower. And just like in NIM 7, the winner is the person who shades the last petal or the last 2 petals next to each other. Charlie, would you like to go first?
No. You let me go first in double or half. I can't remember what it was called.
Okay.
I'll let you go first this time.
All right then. So I'll take blue. Right, I'm going to go first. I'm going to choose that petal. So your turn. You can either choose 1 petal or 2 petals next to each other.
Could I choose the 2 at the bottom, please?
Okay. So I don't think I can win now because there aren't 2 petals next to each other. I have to choose a single petal. And so whichever one I choose, I'm presuming, Charlie.
I can only choose 1, so, oh good.
Charlie wins. Okay. Right, this time, I tell you what, Charlie, let's play again. Those of you participating at home, can you help us out? So rather than us make the decisions, it would be great, please, could you suggest which petal or petals we shade? So shall I go first again?
Yes, please.
Okay, what should I do first, do you think, those of you watching? Shall I do the same thing? Shall I choose 1 petal on its own, or shall I try starting with 2 petals? Jean is suggesting 2 petals. Okay, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, Jean. I'll go with her advice. I'll shade 2. Now, which 2 should I shade, Charlie? Does it matter?
I don't think it makes any difference.
Okay, that symmetry of this game is quite interesting. And although to us, it's relatively obvious that if I shade these 2 petals, it is equivalent to shading these 2 petals for the purposes of this game. That's something that children will obviously find a little bit more tricky. Okay, I'm going to shade 2. I have to shade them next to each other, so I'm going for those 2. Charlie, do your worst. Are you going to ask for help?
Going back to the options you had, Liz, I think if you'd chosen to shade just 1 petal, I would have done exactly the same as I did last time. So I think you had no alternative but to try a different starting point.
Okay, yes, assuming that you're going to play to win, I agree with you, Charlie. Yeah, it would have been very silly of you if I just shaded 1 to start with. It would have been a little bit silly of you to choose to shade 1 if you knew you had a winning strategy already.
I think I can leave you in the same position that I left you before.
What?
If I choose the middle petal of the 3 that are available to me.
This one here?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think you've done it again, Charlie. Again, I'm in the situation where I don't have a choice. I've got to choose 1 petal. It doesn't matter which one I choose. And I'm guessing you're going to do this.
Does this mean I've won twice and you only won once earlier?
Yeah. So this is only a very quick demonstration of the game. Please do post in the chat any thoughts you have relating to the game. Do you think, I mean, it's happened in both these games that Charlie, who played second, has won. Is there anything that I could do in order to gain control of the game and win? Would you mind just having a little think about that? The player going first, can they gain control and win? Do post your thoughts in the chat. Rupesh, I think you make a good point that assuming, we have to assume, I think I'm gonna turn my my camera back on. We have to assume in my questioning that that both players are playing to win strategically, and that actually is something that children find quite hard, particularly at the younger age range. They find quite hard to understand that developing a strategy to win a game means that you can win no matter what your opponent does. So I think if you've not played many strategy games with the children in your class, you may find that some of them are convinced they can win because they happen to have won against their partner, rather thinking in this very methodical way about actually at this point, what are the options and how can I guarantee that I will be able to be in control and ultimately win? Lovely question here about 6 petals. What if you, would our strategy change with 6 petals? Oh, Charlie.
Yes, I've managed to draw something with 7 petals, because it seems to me that after 5, it's once they've worked out that the second player is going to win, it gets a bit boring. Then you play 6 petals, and then you keep going. So there's no need to restrict it to 5 petals. And hopefully people's drawings will be better than mine.
I would really encourage you to explore different numbers of petals. I think the only thing to bear in mind is that, of course, as soon as you add more petals at any stage of the game, you're adding in more possible options. So you're having to think about more alternatives for your next move. So it just becomes, it adds in that level of challenge because children are having to analyse more possibilities, but a great context, as I say, in which to work systematically.
But I think, Liz, I think you did that work yesterday, and you've convinced yourself that, again, the second player, if the second player plays intelligently, the second player will always win with 6 petals.
Yeah, I did. I went through all the possibilities, and there again, it's about this idea that the competitive game is the springboard for actually some collaborative analysis. So at the point, at this point in the classroom, I would be saying to children, okay, work with a partner, see if you can analyze all the possibilities. Can you work systematically through each effective game? And what does this mean? Can the first player ever have control? Okay, we're rapidly coming to the end of our time together. I'm going to go back to the website quickly, but then I'm going to ask Charlie to share something in particular. Here again, we're back at the feature. So that was Daisy. Again, in Daisy, we've created a little video which gives you some instructions on how to play. And again, in the teacher's resources, there are some suggestions about how you could use the video and pause it at various points to encourage children to begin to think strategically. This is another game where you are very welcome to send in your children's thoughts about their strategies. So we hope that you've enjoyed getting a flavour of these strategy games, and really we are intending that these whet your appetite, because we'd like to tell you a little bit more in the short time available about what we've got planned for the summer. So during the summer holidays, actually beginning on the 19th of July, which won't be summer holiday for many of you, we know, going all the way through to the 31st of August, what we're going to be doing on the NRICH site is publishing a new game every weekday. I say a new game, occasionally it's more a puzzle, but what they have in common is, as the activities we've been using today, they're all about strategic thinking. Now, we're going to give you a quick preview of the work in progress here. Charlie, would you mind sharing your screen if I stop sharing at this point? Now, Charlie's he's actually going to show you the NRICH website in a form which currently is it's not going to be available to you because he's logging on in our editor, which of course is not open to the public, but we just wanted to give you a little flavour.
Can you see this now, Liz?
Yes, I can. Brilliant. So what you see here is our planned content for the summer. Now, it won't appear like this ultimately. What will happen over the summer is each new task will be published on each day. I haven't explained that very well. On each day, a new task will become visible. That's a better way of phrasing it. but you can get a little sense of the tasks that we're going to be offering there. One of them, for example, I don't know if you've gone past it, Charlie, is called Got It, which builds on really nicely from NIM 7 and Daisy, because it's another version of NIM, and there's an interactivity for you there. Thanks, Charlie. The activities that we've chosen right at the beginning of our list, so they will appear on days 1 to 5, those top 5. We've chosen particularly because we feel they lend themselves to classroom introduction, knowing that many of you will still be in the classroom then. We hope what we're offering is some mathematical games that children can get their teeth into over the school summer holidays, should they wish. We know that it won't be appropriate for everybody. Because these have all got some sort of children's solutions published with them, children accessing them at home could see what other children have worked on.
In the spirit of what Liz is saying, I'm thinking of families going on holiday and finding that it's raining or the weather's terrible and they've got to stay in. So having an enriched problem or puzzle for the day might be quite good. So what we would really like and what we'd invite you to do is to use the problems that we've introduced to you today to perhaps give to your students to try out at home during the next few weeks. So perhaps the pupils in your classes and their parents sort of get accustomed to doing some of the maths puzzling and strategic thinking, and that might be quite good preparation for this collection of problems. So at Christmas time, we have an Advent calendar, and every day a new problem pops up. So in the spirit of what we did something similar last summer, which we hope will be used by children and their families over the summer. And we'll send a newsletter item, something like the 14th of July, the week before all these problems start going live.
Absolutely. So we're coming to the end now. There's just a couple of points to take you through at the end here. Let me share this screen. Sorry, I'm being a little bit slow. I'm hoping you can see the PowerPoint again. Do follow us on Twitter if you don't already, and you're a user of Twitter, because you'll be alerted to anything new and you'll find out when our summer puzzles and games are published. If you wish to carry on the conversation from today, do use that hashtag NRICHLive. Charlie has mentioned the newsletter. That's just an email newsletter, roughly once a half term, occasionally a couple of times a half term. Again, keeping you informed of our current activities. We haven't said today anything about the curriculum material on Enrich, but that page there takes you to everything you need to know, everything linked to the mathematics curriculum for primary teachers. If you're not familiar with it, do have a little look. After today, near the end of the week, we will put up on that page the recording of today's webinar, along with tomorrow's, which is for secondary teachers. So as we said at the beginning, do feel free to share that with your colleagues. And finally, I mentioned that these webinars are free to you because of funding that we get from Trinity College, and it's really useful for us to be able to feed back to Trinity, and also to hear from you about what has worked well and what you'd like us to do differently next time. So please take a moment to fill in that form. A quick click will take you there immediately. And I wonder, Ems, would you mind popping that link into the chat again? I know you did it a bit earlier, but it'd be great if you could do it again. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you so much for your participation. Charlie and I think have enjoyed working with you this afternoon, and we hope to see you again at a future event. Thank you. Goodbye.